This is a still life that I set up showing how to paint roses. It is has a black box around it, and it has a little picture in it, and then the roses are laid out, and they're kind of propped up underneath so you can see the flowers, because if you lay them down flat, you're not going to get as much of the bloom. So this makes a more interesting composition. So I am going to start by painting the roses. I'm going to put this up here. I've got my canvas is already toned, and the underpainting is on its way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to mix the colors for the roses. You'll notice we have some pinks, we have some really dark reds. This is kind of in shadow by the leaf. The light is coming from the left, because if you'll notice, you can see the shadows kind of going back this way a little bit. When I took the photograph, I have a spotlight that I shined on the roses from the left, so that you'll see that this side is slightly lighter. You'll see that the shadows are kind of over here on the left a little bit, and this little vase is pretty dark on this left or right side over here. So I am going to start my painting by blocking in the darks, which I have done, and then I'm going to put in the colors of the roses next. I've already drawn in my composition. You'll notice that it's kind of not directly in the center. We are going to start next by going ahead and painting in the colors of the roses, the pinks and the darks and so forth, and get those in the painting, and then we will go back in and work the leaves and the white cloth underneath. I'm going to start with mixing the colors for the roses. I have my palette laid out. You will notice too that the palette is laid out in a certain order. All artists always have their palette laid out in the same order. That's why when you're mixing, you don't have to really look around here and try to figure out what color is where. First, I'm going to mix the pink, and I have some alizarin crimson here. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take a big hunk of white. I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to start adding the alizarin crimson until I get a nice pink shade. You take your palette knife, you mix it up pretty thoroughly. Okay, we got a nice light pink there. Now we're going to take some more of this alizarin crimson, and we're going to need a darker shade. So we take this alizarin crimson, we're going to take a little cobalt blue in there and mix that in. That's going to darken that pink up to a kind of a purpley pink. It needs a little bit more alizarin crimson, so we'll stick some more in there. Okay, and then we need a medium pink, so we'll take some of our alizarin crimson and some white, maybe not as much white this time. And we're going to mix up a medium. There. So you will notice that we have a pale, a medium, and a dark. So that will cover all parts of the pink rose. Now let's go ahead and mix up the piles for the red roses. So for the red, we're going to go to Cad Red. I'll put that over here. Now we're going to mix the reds and the roses. There are different shades of red, so we're going to start out by mixing the darkest red. To make the darkest red, I'm going to use Cad Red Light and a little ultramarine blue just to darken that up a little bit. So we get that all mixed up. Maybe it should be just a touch darker. Yeah, there we go. Now it's getting pretty dark. Then we're going to go and we're going to just put down the medium red. Will probably leave pretty much the natural color. For the light red, we're going to take a dab of that. We're going to take a dab of Cad Red Yellow, and that's going to turn out to almost an orangey red. You don't want to use white, because white mixed with Cad Red Light turns out to be a very, very washed out red. I can show you here real quick. It is not nearly as pretty a color as if you add a little bit of the yellow into it. You can tell the difference between that will really pop, whereas that is really kind of washed out. This particular rose, you'll notice, is a little bit darker, so I'm going to go ahead and paint that in with the darker pink. I'm just going to just dab it all in there, just to get that color down. It doesn't have to be particularly thick at this point. We're just trying to get the color where we want it. Okay, we are now going to paint the darker red rose in there. So we'll go to the darker red. We're going to just block it in real quick. Right now, as I said, we're just trying to get the paint on the canvas. We will go back later and do the details of the roses. But that's blocked in. Now we're going to do another one. We're going to block it in. This is a little bit of a lighter one. So we're going to go up here. Just get the general shape of the rose. It does not have to be exact at this point in time. Block that in. Go back here. We're going to block in this one. This is when you get discouraged sometimes because you think, oh my God, look at all these blocks of color. But when you go back in, it'll work. Believe me. And this is a little bit of a lighter one, so we're going to go in there with a lighter red. Not much difference, but just a little bit. Okay, we're going to continue to work on our roses. We've got this one coming up here. Now it's more important for you to watch your brush strokes. Try to get this a little more accurate. And always try to paint the brush strokes the same way that the flower is going. So this is a little lighter here. It's a little darker right in here. And this is a little lighter yet. The highlight up here, maybe just a little bit lighter. So then we're going to go over here, paint this down here. You'll look here, this is kind of coming around like this. You notice that the brush strokes are very different. Also, when you're painting roses, you'll notice that the centers are always very dark. So we're going to paint the center of that rose, that dark color, right in here. There, and you'll notice that we continue to make our little rosy strokes kind of like this, so it looks a little bit more like a rose. And don't worry about being too exact. Flowers are never exact. Maybe we'll work on this pink rose over here a little bit. It's kind of an interesting rose because it's going to be a little more difficult because you'll notice the white is really, it's a real pale pink in here. But so let's go and put the center in this rose first. The center is kind of right in here. You know, it's kind of a straight line, a weird shape there. And then this little loopy here is over here. And we're going to go to a little lighter pink. This is going to go around here, a little darker. And around here. And we're going to go to a light pink and start putting a little of that in there. You'll notice also that the paint is slightly thicker on these roses. And this is going to go around here. Okay, you'll see that I've worked on these roses, got quite a little bit more done here. I'm going to show you on your background, you just want some random strokes to indicate the leaves. You don't want a whole lot of detail because just a little random stroke here and there. And for the baby's breath, a good technique to do there is to just take your brush and some white and red paint and simply plop it like that. and it gives the indication of something very delicate.